And we are back on the Build Phase podcast. I'm your host, Mr. Ben, and on today's episode, we are going to look at some new cards. So these are the second set of spoilers that we're getting for the Mystic Arts expansion. This should have been the expansion that we would have gotten in March had all of the COVID craziness not happened. This would have been the one March expansion. So we got some spoilers for this on Monday. We're going to get a few more today. This is the accelerated card reveal schedule that they put us on to try to make up for the shipping delays. So first of all, I already like that we're seeing some support for older characters. I like that Iron Fist is still a defender here. That gives me some hope that we're going to see some like Doctor Strange Defender affiliated stuff within this Mystic Arts set. So let's dive right in and see what this guy does. First things first. Did I pause it? Or does that mean it's playing? Okay, I think it's paused. All right, so we have Iron Fist. This is the same art from the Iron Fist from the Defenders expansion before, which, okay. I mean, I like new art, but I like new cards more than anything. So if we have to get recycled art, but it means we get more new cards, totally okay with that deal. He has +2/+2 in melee combat. Oh, I guess his stat line is a 2/5/5. So not the best stats. It's not as bad as the 2/4/5, which is sort of like the bottom tier stat line that Super Awesome Games gives to some cards. But anytime he enters melee combat, this guy's going to be a 4/7 starting on turn 1. That seems pretty good, man. He has, for real, this is the same power that's on his supporting character. So pay a red, hit a guy. That seems really good. It's extremely good on the supporting character. Now, it does get a little expensive after a while, but this is a guy who has built in, like, he can punch Thanos, he can punch anything. Like, your opponent can't have a strategy that relies on building big stacks of green counters on front row characters or, like, death, that kind of thing that snowballs out of control. This guy says, nope. That's not going to fly in any meta where he's allowed. But what else does he do? So when an enemy supporting character appears, Iron Fist may challenge it. I already like the flavor of it. He may challenge it unless there's already a character he's challenging on any side. When Iron Fist stuns a character he is challenging, he gets +1 XP. So is challenge a status effect? I was assuming it was going to be like an effect that happened, like freeze or whatever, but let's read more. If a character Iron Fist is challenging leaves play, that character is no longer being challenged. That, I feel like that doesn't need to be said. If he stuns a character he is challenging but doesn't KO it, he is still challenging that character. Finish him. So I guess that's just a little bit disappointing, I'm afraid. I was hoping that challenge was going to mean that it, I don't know, did something. So really what this challenge on this guy is it means he's targeting a character. He's chosen a target, and you have to choose the target on the recruit. So obviously the Iron Fist player is going to want to challenge characters that only have 1 HP because you have to KO them. Well, I guess he doesn't have to KO them. He gets the XP off stunning them. Whereas to free him up to be able to challenge another character, that character has to be KO'd. Okay, so that's a little bit better than I was initially thinking. I initially read his level up condition as that he had to KO the challenger, and I'm like, that sucks, man. You can't change it if a better target comes into play without dealing with the one. Somebody could dump a bunch of buff into that one character or hide it or do other things to make it. I mean, they can still hide it. So he only needs to do it twice, though. It's online from turn 1. He's going to be entering into turn 1 with the ability to stun 4 attack. That's probably doable. This is probably all fine. I was really hoping that challenge meant they were going to, like, I don't know, go off and do something on their own. Like they were going to strike each other or something. But no, you're just painting a target on a guy. I can get XP from this guy. He's been challenged. Maybe a little bit of a flavor fail on how that mechanic. I like the idea of Iron Fist challenging dudes, but I don't know. Something about the fact that challenge doesn't really do anything other than label that guy as an XP reservoir feels a little, I don't know. I wanted a little more from that particular mechanic. Okay, so then he becomes a 6/6 with 5. That's a passable stat block for 2017. Master of the martial arts, +4/+4 in melee. So he's a 10/10 on melee. That's pretty good. So the Master of the Iron Fist Punch does the same thing that the Iron Fist Punch level 1 does, only it has the additional benefit of KOing supporting characters that get hit with this power. This is an awesome cleanup tool for Galactus, Thing, Silver Surfer, any of these fantastic arc, insane, like main character level hit point supporting characters that we got. This guy is a cleanup tool for those. Okay, that's cool. Does it do enough? Like, do I want to be sending my 10/10 main character into a 30/30 Galactus just to lethal him off the board? Well, probably. I mean, I'd probably rather win the game. Like, this guy seems like he wants to win the game before Galactus really becomes a thing. So maybe that's not like the ideal use case. And depending upon, and that 5 health is going to be rough. This is all melee. Yes, his both level 1 and 2 give him a stat boost on the defense as well as on the attack, but he's not that big. He has to attack melee to do any of his fun stuff. I don't know, man. I feel like he needed 6 health to really be considered playable. I do think kitchen table wise, like if you're a fan of Iron Fist, this character is a flavor win for the most part. I wish the challenge mechanic had more to it other than just like a label on a guy, but whatever, that's not that big of a deal. And he can definitely get in there and scrap. I mean, this guy's not afraid of anybody in the melee combat. He can just take anybody down. That's pretty cool. That 5 health looks scary though, because you're going to be getting hit back. I'm sure you're going to be getting hit back. All right, so another Marvel melee minded martial man. That is full cannon repetitive M's right there. Like a machine gun of Marvel melee-minded martial man. Wow, this one's taking a while to load. That was weird. All right, so this is a 4 cost, 5/5, 2 health, ancient 1. That background. Wow. Not the biggest fan of this card art. Like the actual figure is fine, and this hand looks really cool, but that background, yikes. All right, so he gets +2/+2 in melee combat. So he's a 4 cost 7/7. Because you're not gonna put a ranged, you're not gonna give this guy range and make a ranged attack with him, obviously. Oh, unaffiliated. Yeesh. Oh man. So in order for him to cast these yellow spells, he's gonna have to have a basic yellow because he's not gonna have a wild. He's a 7/7 that you're probably going to be able to kill 2 things with. He's okay, I guess. I mean, we don't know what the intellect spells are going to look like. So we don't know how powerful they are. We don't know what they're going to do. But man, I don't like him being unaffiliated. And you have to be able to pay a yellow to use these spells. So not only are we talking about presumably one-of-a-kinds, 4 one-of-a-kind spells if they look like the blue ones, which we don't know, but knowing how Super Awesome Games tends to operate, if the energy element, power symbol, whatever, is getting 4, and I think that's a pretty educated guess given the spoilers on Monday, so we assume they're getting 4 one-of-a-kind spells. I think we can infer until there's just let's scroll down, let's see how wrong I am. No, they're both one of a kind. Okay, so I think it's safe to infer that this guy is going to require you to draw one of a kind, depending upon what effect you want, and then have a basic yellow to play him. And on top of whatever spell stuff he does, he's a 7/7 with 2 health on 4. I mean, 4 mana 7/7s seem pretty good to me. But I want to like spells. I'm just not convinced. Oh, pepperoni nipples. Okay, so Mojo here is a 5 cost villain affiliated. Now, I remember famously in old verses, Mojo was like the character that benefited from other unaffiliated characters. You could like build whole decks with like Mojo versus Mojo and do like stuff with unaffiliated guys. Yet here, this guy's a villain and this dude, I don't get it. And he's a spellcaster? Mojo has magic? I mean, I'm not like the biggest X-Men fan, so, and this, I think of him as being like an X-Men or X-Men adjacent villain, so maybe there's just stuff about Mojo I didn't know. But spellcaster? Okay, well, whatever. He's a 5, what the hell? Is this real? He's a 5 cost 1/1. Flight, range, 2 health. That is terrible. And he gets +1/+1 for each other face-up character. So the immediate thing that comes to mind is Goblin Queen, right? But she's going to want your yellows too to make the goblins. I mean, if we go full on like flood deck, you get a 1-drop on turn 1. You could play Squirrel Girl on turn 2. That could potentially get you up to like 3 tokens. On turn 3, you could play some combination of lower drops. On turn 4, the same thing. So you could have, he could be like a 7/7 maybe if your opponent isn't drawing anything, and so they're not cleaning up your board. Or if you have like a rogue type main character who's like big enough in the front that in the early game she can kind of just hold people back while you build the back row. Then on 5 you drop this guy and he's probably going to be like a 4/4. Oh, I guess it's each other face up, so it counts your opponent's characters too. Okay, well that so this is a card that rewards you for paying flood, but punishes your opponent if they're playing flood. Dude, and if you want to play these yellow spells, you're probably going to have to play this guy. I bet we get 3 or 4 spellcasters of each color, and we get exactly 4 spells of each color, which means if these yellow spells are like cool and they're like tent poles in your deck strategy, then you're going to have to play this guy. So in Fairy Unicorn Rainbow Land, where you can pretend all things are possible, this is actually kind of cool. If you think about the idea of having a rogue type main character with, you know, Squirrel Girl, Iceman, some combination of token generating stuff, Ahab would fit into that deck. So you think about that kind of deck. I want to frustrate you and slow you down a little bit while also building up a whole bunch of guys in the back row. Singularity, like the deck that Bert played in the Invitational kind of fits into this mold too. He like gets all these things in play, and then once his setup is complete, then he starts going aggressive. So this guy could be like a payoff for like a Sentinel deck, or I mean Squirrel Girl. I don't know. It's hard for me to see this working, because in most games of Versus, the way it works out is the games are very board centric for the most of the time. Now at the absolute peak of Versus, there is more presence of control strategies, and tuck and pass decks have becoming more and more popular over the years. But I think the vast majority of the games that most of us play are at the kitchen table with our friends, and there's a lot of dudes smashing into dudes. And if you're playing that kind of attrition game plan, then when Mojo comes down, he's going to be like a 3/3. I mean, if we think like every turn we're smashing each other, you have a main character, I have a main character, I play Mojo, so he's a 4/4. No, a 3/3. Because he doesn't benefit from himself. Yeah, he doesn't benefit from himself. So he'd be a 3/3 on 5 in that kind of game. Now you play this guy against Outriders, that could be pretty cool. You know, even if you're losing that game, he comes down as a 7/7 minimum. 5 mana 7/7 isn't fantastic, but at least in those kind of situations, he might find some playability. It seems to me like this is a card that wants to be in a different game, though. This wants to be in a game that's more about building a lot of guys on the board, and to have him so poorly statted to begin with. I mean, Blackheart is a 7 cost 4/4 that gets +1/+1 for each evil character in the KO pile. Death gets +1/+1 for each character in any KO pile. So there's like other forms of this type of effect in the game that are probably not the most dominant strategies, have not generally been the craziest effects, and this one is even more tenuous, more fragile than something like Blackheart or Silver Surfer. So, all right, let's get down. I think his playability is going to rest largely on how badly we want to play these. Now, the generic names continue. Knowledge. They really weren't putting much effort into naming these spells. I do like this card art. Knowledge. You may only have one of this card in your deck, like we predicted. So in order to play this, you have to have a yellow, an intellect spellcaster in play. You can do it during main or any combat. Search your deck for a card and put it into your hand. So you're 2-for-1ing yourself to use this card. You have to pay a yellow. You have to use the card. Global Information Network and Wakanda have proven time and again that paying 2 cards to get one, if it's the card you really need, is a bargain all of us players are willing to make. You get more, in terms of having the right card in your hand, that's more important than having 2 whatever other cards. So, and the fact that you can do this during combat means you could go fish up some kind of important plot twist or whatever. But now you're talking about really, you're paying 3 cards to get one. I mean, combo decks are going to like this. They're going to want this. Decks that are extremely reliant on having one specific card, this is going to see play. I don't know if this card by itself, if it was a 4-of, if I could build my deck around the consistency that this card promised, and I could know that I could consistently draw this card, then sure, I would play this card. I use Wakanda, I use Global Information Network. This is a strictly better Global Information Network, but it has this requirement of having to have a spellcaster, and I'll be honest, neither one of these spellcasters gets me that excited. I mean, 4-mana 7/7s are cool, but this guy could be like a 5-mana 3/3. Intellect. Draw 3 cards. Spend this and a yellow, draw 3 cards. Sure, that's fine. That's fine. I like how Sister Grimm's abilities are slowly just appearing on every other card type in the game. They're just over time, the Sister Grimm main character is being broken into pieces, and these mechanics are being repackaged to us in the form of Might Makes Right, and now this intellect plot twist, the Mind Jam. These cards are fine. I get the kind of deck that they want to be in. Do combo builds and versus need more activators? Probably not. Can combo builds afford to fit these kinds of searching tools and also have room for spellcasters? Probably not. So what kind of deck do these fit into? I'm not sure. I guess we're going to see Doctor Strange next time. We look at a supremely talented sorcerer. And this one comes out March 31st. So when I said before that this was supposed to be the March expansion, that was when like Masters of Evil would have been the February expansion. This would have been the March expansion. So we're getting 2 in March instead, and then another one very quickly thereafter. So, gosh, what do I think about Mystic Arts Preview number 2? I think this main character looks fun. I think he looks playable. Not convinced he's going to be super playable at the tournament table. I maybe, but like if you want to play the kind of deck where you're just going to turn sideways and do a bunch of melee things, Rogue exists. So it would have to be a format where you can play him but can't play Rogue, or there's more to all this Mystic stuff that I haven't yet thought of. His power seems a little juxtaposed, a little at odds with what this guy wants to do. I think this guy wants to kill people fast, and giving him a way to... I mean, I immediately thought about him killing Galactus, but it's just he kills whatever the biggest thing is to hopefully let the rest of your characters through to put that last wound on the main character. He's fine. He's it feels like Iron Fist. I think the more I think about this card, the more I like it for what it is. I still kind of stand by. I'm not sure that he's going to be the most competitive guy. Now, I will say if there's a meta where like Thorigens is, and I think I mentioned Thorigens last expansion too, or last card reveal too, but in that meta, if you go in expecting mounds and mounds of green counters on opposing characters, I think this guy could really clean up in that format. 4 mana 7/7s are fine. Spellcaster's fine. This guy is just not that impressive. He gets eaten alive by ranged guys. There's like 2 drops with range that are going to be able to value trade with this guy, which is terrible. But 4 mana 7/7. I wrote a whole song about 4 mana 7/7s. It was a Hearthstone song. But anyway, Mojo, I think this guy might be bad. I am a fan of flooding lots of guys onto the board, and I am a fan of cards that scale and get better if you build your deck around feeding into them, and that's really cool. So this does touch a couple of... I also noticed all these supporting characters have 2 health. That's cool. I would have... This guy could have been 1, and we could have put 6 on him. That would have been cool. I think I like what this Mojo card wants to be doing. I'm just not convinced that he's actually going to do it. And I kind of feel the same way about these. The kind of deck that wants to be able to have targeted search or draw 3 cards at will, those are both really good powers. But what do you think about when you're thinking about those kinds of decks? Generally, you're thinking about some kind of a combo. If I'm running a combo, am I going to have room for these and then the activators for these and then the yellows to pay for these? I don't know. Perhaps this could be like a refill mechanic. Like, let's say we build an aggressive Iron Fist. Like, I think he wants to be aggressive. And we put these cards in, and what these do, it's not that it's combo enablers, it gets me that 5-drop I need on turn 5, or it gets me that red shift I need on turn 6 so I can lock my opponent's ability to interact with my generally bigger melee guys out of the game. So in that kind of application, maybe these do see play. Maybe the intellect spellcast isn't going to be so much about trying to recycle and really focus on the power of the spells like the energy ones kind of led me to believe. Maybe the thing here is these are going to be support tools for more aggressive decks. They're going to essentially be refill mechanics. Like when you're starting to run out of gas in the mid game, these are the cards that can kind of fill that hand back up in the case of intellect, or get you that perfect answer that you need in terms of like a red shift or maybe a combat pump or whatever it is. It gets you the silver bullet you need to deal with one problematic character. Iron Fist can deal with the other problematic character, and then your 4 mana 7/7 can swing in and clean up the main character. I think I like these in general more than the previews I saw on Monday, which kind of stands to reason. If you're going to try to build hype by revealing cards to us, show us the like least exciting ones first and the more exciting ones later. Nothing in here makes me feel like this Spellcaster mechanic. I'm not changing my mind on Spellcaster yet. To me, this seems like the sins of the Sentinel team affiliation, only greatly magnified. Spellcaster is just a new team affiliation, and these are all team stamped plot twists that are only going to be able to be played in these narrow, if you have these narrow team requirements met. Plus, they're more expensive. I mean, this thing, you're drawing 3 cards, but you're spending 2 cards to do it. So you're essentially drawing a card. That doesn't feel very good. And knowledge doesn't do anything. And neither one of these 2 plot twists do anything by themselves. Like, these are just tools that facilitate you getting to something else that can do something. So I do think it's cool to see Mojo make it into the game. This big, ugly, dumb guy is cool. I think this is a cool main character. So I don't want to be like overly negative on these cards. I don't think they're necessarily bad. I don't think they're bad at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that as of this moment, I am unconvinced that there is going to be enough spellcaster support to make any of these spells as playable as I'm going to want them to. I'm worried that when I look into my crystal ball and I look into the future, what I see here is I'm going to have kind of an ambivalence towards this mechanic the same way I have an ambivalence towards the Sentinel set. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I don't have a wild card for that team. And I think one of the main characters just straight up doesn't perform without a wild card. So playable, probably not competitive, and it might be this whole box is going to be targeting kind of the kitchen table crowd with these wacky new mechanics that are just not going to be consistent enough to be something you want to bet your tournament hopes on. At least that's where I'm at right now. So hopefully we see some more exciting things out of the rest of this box, and I can honestly changed my mind about spells because I like the idea of it. They just have not won me over with any of the execution so far. As always, thanks to the patrons of the show. It's really cool that you guys help pay the server bills and cover the costs of things. If you'd like to be a patron, patreon.com/thebuildphase. We're doing cool stuff. And until next time, go win some games.